Serious, what is the creepiest true story you know of that sends shivers down your spine? A man in my hometown came down to the family room where his wife was after putting his daughter to bed. His hand was cut so badly he needed stitches. He said he cut it in the kitchen. So the wife called the neighbor to come over and house/babysit while she took the husband to the ER for stitches. A little while later, the wife called home and asked her to check on the daughter. The neighbor discovered the dead, bloody, stabbed daughter sort of shoved in the toilet. It turns out, the dad had been sexually molesting the daughter for years, and when she became older, she learned about this type of abuse at school, at trial, or sometime down the line. It was revealed that the dad learned the daughter was going to tell someone, so he killed her. He panicked when he cut himself trying to somehow hide the crime and flush away evidence. IDK, how you flush an entire body. So my memory must be sketchy. The poor mom couldn't afford to move, divorce and trial, and remained in the home for years until it sold. My friend was friends with the family, and besides the very obvious creep factor of all this, she said everyone was so haunted that she still had to live there. Shared this before, but it's a good one. This happened to a friend of mine a few years ago when he and his wife were hiking in the Gold Coast hinterland in Queensland, Australia. After a good day's hike they stopped at the rest stop to use the bathroom before heading back to the car. The bathrooms at the rest stop were compost toilets, so the block of toilets were positioned on top of a large tank. The waste goes in the tank and breaks down naturally, and in the winter months often shoots a blast of cool air up the bum of anyone using them. My friend's wife went to use the ladies while he waited outside, but she'd not been in there long when he heard her scream and rush out of the toilet. It's Australia, so there are many reasons for running out of a bush toilet screaming. Snakes, spiders, drop bears, Ivan Millet. But this one takes the cake. There's a man in the toilet. My friend was confused. His wife explained to him that she'd gone to the loo, and after she'd finished she looked into the tank. Come on. You know, morbid curiosity would get the better of you too. And there, submerged in liquid poop, she saw a bald man staring up at her. He didn't believe her, but she was adamant he go look. So he went into the ladies, and with the flashlight from his iPhone he illuminated the poop hole to get a better look. He couldn't see anything, but she was certain there was someone hiding in the tank watching people use the toilet. As they were leaving, and still arguing about it, they were approached by a man. Excuse me, but did you see something weird in the toilet? My friend's wife answered yes. The man replied, was it a man? He and his girlfriend had been hiking the weekend before, and his girlfriend had seen the same thing. They all ran back up to the toilets for a second look. When they reached the door they heard a sound from behind the toilet block. My friend and their new acquaintance went around the back of the toilet block to check it out, while his wife looked in the tank from the bowl. At the back of the tank the top hatch had been opened. The bolt and chain had been removed, and a telltale brown smudge seemed to suggest someone had slid down the back of the tank and taken off into the bush. True story about my grandma that takes place before they had children. My grandpa, Daryl, worked night shifts, so my grandma, Dora, was home alone most nights. Her sister-in-law, Rose, would randomly come over to keep her company. Dora decided to go to bed early one night. Rose came over that night to see how she was doing. She went to Dora's bedroom after calling for her with a reply of "I'm in bed. Just come in." Upon entering the room, Rose starts acting weird and telling her she really wants her to get up and come help her with something in the kitchen. Dora was ready to go to sleep and was already in bed and really didn't want to. Rose was really adamant for her to come help her, telling her it was urgent. After a while Dora eventually got up and followed Rose to the kitchen. Upon entering, Rose whispers in a panic with tears in her eyes, "There's a man under your bed with a knife." Dora of course didn't believe at first, but seeing the panic in Rose's eyes she couldn't not believe her. They proceeded to call the cops and left to the neighbor's house. The cops came and found a man hiding in the closet with a butcher knife. And that is a story of how my grandmother was almost murdered, and why I still to this day as a 30-year-old man check under the bed. Edit. This actually is a completely true story. As far as the cops knew, it was a totally random stranger. This also took place in Missouri in the 50s. I was the youngest in my household. So I drew the short straw when it came to morning shower times. 5:30 AM was my slot, followed by my sister. I was showering one morning when I heard what I thought was my sister pounding on the door. I did what any 9-year-old would do and screamed my lungs out telling her to stop it. The pounding continued. My dad got up to tell my sister to stop, but my sister was fast asleep. He heard that the pounding was coming from outside, so he looked out the window. There was a man looking in the bathroom window. He did what a Midwestern dad would do. He grabbed his rifle and chased the man through the snow of Michigan winter. He didn't catch him. I didn't know any of this had taken place. So when I got to school and heard people laughing about my dad running through the snowy streets wearing only his underwear, I got home and asked my dad what had happened. And he said there was a bad man watching me shower. He told me years later that this man had made a masturbation plinth and had clearly spent a lot of time setting it up in the tree and even more time watching me shower every morning. The cops were called and the man was never caught. The thing is, I come from a very small town where everybody knows everybody else. So chances are high that I came face to face with the masturbation plinth man and was none the wiser. This couple had a huge tree in their backyard and it started to smell and ooze. They had arborists come in and look at the tree but no one could figure out what was wrong. The couple decided to have the tree removed. When the branches started coming down, a body fell out. A homeless woman was sleeping in the tree and died. Her body had been decomposing for ages. My parents knew this couple. I had history with their daughter. Happened to a friend and me on US 54 in central Missouri. This happened around 1 AM. Heading on a spring break fishing trip to Arkansas, with lightning illuminating the clouds in the distance. We were driving my minivan on a winding 2-lane road. No lights except my headlights. When I see a person standing in the middle of the road waving us down. Optimistic me decides to pull over to see if I could be of help. Smart me kept the doors locked and only cracked the window a bit. Smart me also never put it into park. Guy walks over and his face is bloodied. Says he had just wrecked his car. There was about a 10-foot ditch along the road, so I couldn't see any car. Says his wife hurt. Wife comes crawling up. She's bloodied too. I offer to call the police for help and wait until they arrive. They want to wait in the van. I politely decline. At that point, they tried pulling the door handles to get into my van. I don't know if they were truly hurt or if this was a hillbilly ruse, but I wasn't willing to wait around to find out. I was fortunate that they didn't have a weapon of any sort. Adrenaline from the situation kept me awake until the 4 AM arrival in Harrison. This happened to my teacher in high school. I don't have any way of verifying it's the truth, but I can't think of any reason she'd have to lie, and she seemed very shaken up when telling our class. My teacher is a woman, and she was probably in her mid-40s at the time. Her husband was out of town, so she was sleeping at home by herself on a random weeknight when she starts hearing this thud over and over again. After a couple minutes she gets out of bed and tries to figure out what it is. It sounds like it's coming from the backyard, so she looks out of one of the windows on the second floor. There's a man repeatedly flinging himself at her back door. The way she described this guy, you could just see she was extremely disturbed by him. She said it was like he had no regard for his own body. He would just take 2 to 3 steps back and slam his whole body into the door. She said she thought he had to be on some kind of drugs, but still, she lives in a quiet, pretty much crime-free neighborhood, and some dude randomly started ramming his body at her door. Anyway, she called the cops and the lady on the line told her she should leave the house, but she thought she would be safer staying in her room and hiding. I can't even imagine how scared she must have been waiting for the police to arrive. They came after a couple minutes and arrested the guy. She didn't get to speak to him or really find out very much other than that they put him in jail. I graduated before I found anything else out about it. This actually happened to a friend of mine. She used to live in an entirely different town when she was younger, and her closet had this strange door in the back of it. Well, whether it was imagined just due to her being a child at the time, or if it really did happen, she started to hear noises coming from behind this door whenever she went to bed. She told me that several times she tried telling her parents that she was hearing these noises, but they never believed her. So some time goes by, and one day her parents get a call from the police because they just arrested a homeless man. This was not just any homeless man though. This homeless man was living in some sort of tunnel that goes straight to that door in the back of her closet. So every once in a while, for whatever reason, this man would come through that door and watch my friend sleep in her closet. The story of Les Zekulski, the vampire of Bite. Imagine a Hodder-sized, mentally challenged hobo, caked in old seamen, blood and fecal matter, who uses freight trains to travel along Poland, getting off the train randomly whenever it stopped on a secluded train station, preferably near a park or in the woods. He would then chase down a random person of any gender, overpower them, then extremely brutally rape them, vaginally or anally, while either strangling them dead or breaking their neck with his bare hands. He was so insanely strong. Some of the victims were found literally raped to death, internal organ rupture, or broken pelvic bones rupturing an artery he used to break victims' legs to push them out of the way, or simply broken into a human pretzel, dislocated limbs, unscrewed necks, spines broken backwards etc. After he came, he would just hop back on the next train and reappear in some other random town. It took ages to hunt him down and put him behind bars in a prison asylum. The best part? Due to a technicality caused by some kind of colossal duck up during the investigation, he will be set free in 2017. He claims to have killed at least 80 people. There is evidence of at least 17 confirmed kills. TLDR, the unholy hobo redneck hellspawn of Jason Voorhees and Hodder is going to rampage again in 2017. Rapper murdering random people to death. When my mom was a teenager, she would get calls from an anonymous man who would just breathe heavily into the phone and say creepy shit. One night she was sleeping over at her best friend's house, which was directly next door to her own house. It was the middle of the night, but she decided to go home. Her friend said that she would then sleep over at my mom's house instead. So the two of them walked together to my mom's house. My mom's friend suddenly screamed, and they both ran inside. When they got inside, my mom's friend said that she saw a man hiding in the bushes between the two houses. If my mom's friend hadn't decided to go over with her, she would have been walking alone. Who knows what would have happened then. I've posted this a couple of times before, but this thread seems appropriate for it. My ex-wife and I woke up in the middle of the night to find all our lights out in the house. We had not lost power. The living room light that we always leave on overnight had been turned off. The bathroom night light was removed and placed under the sink. The computer had been unplugged, and the monitor cord was unplugged and neatly folded on the desk. All of the doors and windows in the house were unlocked, undamaged, and standing wide open. Our bedroom door was open, and the TV we always fall asleep to was turned off. Nothing was taken. Our cats were both hiding behind the refrigerator and stayed there for most of the next day. Whenever someone came and knocked at the door, our larger cat would start to growl and stare at the door from then on. She no longer does this after we moved. We had a couple of other mildly strange things that happened in context with that apartment as well. Second one submitted here because I remembered it being creepy. Our family has a cabin on a central MN lake. 3 summers ago, my brother and I had our girlfriends, now wives, out there for the weekend. We were sitting on the dock when a sheriff's boat comes up asking if we had lost our boat, as they had found one floating unoccupied. We hadn't, and the sheriff moved on. We thought about what that might mean and decided that either A, someone's boat had floated off their boat lift, really likely, or B, someone fell out of their boat and managed to drown without anyone noticing on a busy day on the lake. Quite unlikely. After dark we were back in the cabin. The cabin was on a hill about 20 feet up overlooking the lake shore. We noticed a strange boat out there with a mounted spotlight. It looked like a duck hunting boat, and I figured the spotlight was for bow fishing for carp or the like. But there were too many trees to tell. As the boat neared our section of shore, we could begin to see it clearly through the trees. The spotlight was oscillating back and forth over the water. Then, It illuminated a large object floating in the water about 10 feet off the edge of our dock. I only saw it for about a second, but swear that it was a body. The spotlight immediately turns off. Voices begin shouting. The boat accelerates to the spot, and we hear the sound of chains winching. About 30 seconds later, the boat headed directly towards the public landing. We called the sheriff a few days later to ask if there were any water recoveries on our lake. They said no. I don't buy it. I had a family friend's house get broken into. We lived in the rural Appalachian Mountains. She lived alone and someone had wiggled open her back window while she was out. When she got home that the window was slightly open and the dishes on the counter in front of it had been moved. She backed out of the house and called the sheriff. The police clear the house and make sure it's safe. The only things missing was the spare key to the house. The intruder had also unloaded her pistol she kept in the nightstand. It would have been better if they had stolen something. We could just call them a son of a bitch and moved on. This however was a different kind of unsettling. She refused to move out because of a stalker. She was in her early 30s and was not going to be intimidated. So we changed the locks and put motion lights. The sheriff did drive-bys for a while. Her friends and family made a habit of hanging out on her porch into the late night. We would drink, smoke, and meet there before and after going out. It really became a gathering point for everyone even after the suspicions passed. We never heard any more from the stalker. I liked her to think that between her being extra careful and so many people looking out for her, he never got the chance and moved on. TL. Doctor, the fact that he only took the key sends shivers down my spine. He didn't want money, valuables, or even the free gun he unloaded. He wanted her. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.